All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unraveling a pretty fascinating contradiction hidden in the culturally vibrant and completely fictional town of Malgudi. We're looking at the opening chapter of Arcane Orion's masterpiece, The Vendor of Sweets. Literally from page 1, Narayan sets up this world where tradition and modernity, spirituality and materialism are on this quiet but constant collision course. And right smack in the middle of it all, our protagonist, a 55-year-old man named Jagan. Now, Jagan is, well, he's a deeply curious puzzle of a human being. As we walk through his story today, you're going to see how his character perfectly captures the struggles of a rapidly changing society. Let's get into it.
Conquered taste, and you will have conquered the self. That is a pretty lofty philosophical declaration, right? It's actually the opening line of the novel, and it serves as Jagan's ultimate personal motto. It instantly sets up his self-image. He genuinely sees himself as this disciplined, spiritually evolved ascetic. But when you look just a little bit closer, you hit this massive, honestly kind of comical contradiction. This profound statement about denying sensory pleasures, it's proudly spoken by a man who literally makes his fortune running a highly profitable sweet shop. I mean, you can't make this up. He is actively preaching the denial of the senses, while simultaneously exploiting the public's craving for sugary treats to build his own wealth. It's wild.
Okay, let's dive into this contradiction, because it really forms the entire core of Jagan's existence. In theory, Jagan claims he's perfected the art of living on natural diets. He will proudly tell literally anyone who listens that he has entirely given up salt, sugar, and rice. He views himself as this pure soul, floating far above the materialistic dirt of the physical world. But then we look at the capitalist reality. The guy oversees a booming sweetmeat enterprise in Malgudi. His entire livelihood relies heavily on the exact same ingredients, refined sugar, rich, decadent flavors, that he so publicly condemns. It's a total paradox.
To really wrap our heads around Jagan's self-image, we have to look at what he's actually aiming for here. He claims to practice asceticism. Now, if you need a quick refresher, asceticism basically means imposing severe self-discipline and avoiding all forms of indulgence, usually for religious or spiritual reasons. Jagan considers himself this devout, extreme follower of Mahatma Gandhi, and he tries to apply these rigid, self-sacrificing principles to his everyday habits. For example, he dresses exclusively in traditional Indian garments, a loose jabba tunic and a draped dhoti. And he doesn't just buy them, they're made entirely from khadi fabric that he painstakingly spins himself, every single day. He is absolutely committed to projecting this image of pure, detached spiritualism to everyone around him.
But how does that spiritual detachment actually play out in practice? Well, when we find Jagan in his shop, he doesn't exactly look like a humble servant. Instead, he sits on this wooden chair that is strategically elevated on a platform. It's actually pretty funny when you think about it. His spiritual detachment somehow requires him to have the most comfortable, elevated seat in the entire house, just so he can physically look down on everyone else. From this high vantage point, he oversees every single operation of his bustling business. He watches the head cook, he keeps a sharp eye on the counter attendant, and he monitors the front stall boy who collects the cash. He's described as being a lot like a monarch surveying his domain. That physical elevation is just a perfect metaphor for how he views his own social standing and his deep underlying need for absolute control.
And this brilliantly illustrates the clash between his spiritual posturing and his earthly attachments. So picture this. He'll sit there in his shop, reading the Hindu holy scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, focusing on the eternal. Yet his eyes somehow never truly leave the cash register. He is hyper-aware of every single cent flowing in. And it gets better. He constantly boasts about making his own non-violent footwear, right? He strictly uses leather from animals that died naturally, adhering to this strict policy of not harming living creatures. Noble, right? But the earthly reality of this noble pursuit is that the actual tanning process involves curing dead skins right at his house, and it creates such an overwhelming stench that it completely ruins his domestic peace. It makes his home a deeply unpleasant place to even be in.
Now, navigating all of this alongside Jagan is a character simply known as the cousin. And actually, scratch that. This isn't necessarily a blood relative. Think of him more like that one person in every office or neighborhood who just knows absolutely everyone's business and is somehow always around. Every single afternoon, right at 4:30, this cousin arrives at Jagan's shop, and he serves as a crucial narrative foil here. While Jagan has his head stuck in the clouds of Gandhian philosophy, the cousin is entirely grounded in the practical, everyday realities of Malgudi. He acts as this much-needed bridge between Jagan's isolated, self-righteous worldview and the actual, functioning society buzzing around him.
And the cousin knows exactly how to handle Jagan. He delivers these perfect lines like, "You have perfected the art of living on nothing," whenever Jagan starts boasting about giving up salt and sugar. This flatters Jagan's massive ego immensely. It totally validates his intense pride in his self-imposed deprivations. But it also highlights a pretty glaring lack of self-awareness on Jagan's part. I mean, Jagan eagerly eats up this praise for living on nothing, while completely, blissfully ignoring the fact that his large house, his comfortable lifestyle, and his respected status in the community are entirely bankrolled by a highly lucrative sugar empire.
Which brings us to a really fascinating question, and I want you to think about this as we go. Does the cousin genuinely respect Jagan's ascetic philosophy, or is he just patronizing him for his own personal benefit? Think about their daily routine. The cousin casually samples free sweets straight from the kitchen, and in return, he provides an agreeable sounding board for Jagan's philosophical rants. It basically functions as this hilarious, unspoken transaction between two hustlers. The cousin gets a free meal every single afternoon, and Jagan gets a captive audience to stroke his ego under the guise of philosophical instruction. It's this subtle, masterfully written manipulation happening on both sides.
Now, as evening approaches, whatever fragile illusion of spiritual detachment Jagan has managed to maintain, it completely dissolves. We arrive at what we'll call the 6 o'clock secret. This is the exact moment where Jagan's carefully crafted illusion just totally falls apart. When the shop formally closes its books for the day, Jagan's keen capitalistic focus takes absolute priority. Let's look at exactly how this little financial process works, because it is fascinating.
Honestly, this plays out way more like a stealthy, covert operation than a standard business practice. Step 1. At exactly 6 p.m., the official books slam shut. All earnings up to this point are meticulously entered into the official government ledger, but the shop stays open. For the next hour, every single bit of cash that comes across that counter is kept completely separate. Finally, this post-6 o'clock cash is discreetly bundled and hidden away so we can take it home totally tax-free. Now, you might be wondering, how does a strict, pious man justify blatant tax evasion? Well, through masterful self-deception. Jagan internalizes and rationalizes this extra cash not as business profit, but as a personal entitlement or free cash. He literally uses his spiritual beliefs as a convenient shield to validate his own material greed.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the specific word Narayan uses to describe this moment. The surroundings were hushed when the master counted his earnings for the day. That word, hushed, implies this profound sense of reverence and sanctity, doesn't it? It tells us that despite all of Jagan's loud claims of spiritual detachment, and despite him conspicuously reading the Bhagavad Gita throughout the entire day, the second he touches his secret money, the atmosphere turns deeply, almost religiously serious. It perfectly highlights that counting cash, rather than reading scriptures, is Jagan's true, commanding sacred ritual.
But here's the thing. Narayan isn't just writing about one hypocritical guy in a sweet shop. Jagan's personal duality is highly symbolic of a much broader, post-independence struggle in India. The tension we see here represents the clash between the idealistic, self-sacrificing values of the Gandhian freedom movement, which Jagan represents with his gaudy clothes and ascetic rhetoric, and the rising capitalistic, materialistic drive of the modern era, represented by his booming business and those hidden cash bundles. And really, this connects back to all of us. Jagan's struggle mirrors how we all sometimes struggle to reconcile our own high ideals with the very convenient, comfortable realities of modern life. He is deeply trapped between who he desperately wants to be, a spiritual ascetic, and who he actually is, a shrewd, highly protective businessman.
What really makes this story so enduring, though, is that R.K. Narayan doesn't judge Jagan harshly, and that is the absolute hallmark of Narayan's signature gentle satire. He presents Jagan's deep-seated flaws and hypocrisies with incredible warmth, a lot of humor, and this really lightly ironic tone. The narrator doesn't condemn Jagan as some evil tax evader. Rather, he playfully observes the psychological gymnastics of a traditionalist who is just trying to navigate a rapidly changing world. Jagan is desperately trying to hold on to both his spiritual identity and his wallet. It's a beautifully observant, deeply humanizing portrait.
As we wrap up our explainer today, I want to leave you with a few provocative questions to ponder as you think about this chapter. First, how does the specific choice of a sweet shop amplify Jagan's irony? Next, in that symbiotic dynamic we discussed earlier, who truly holds the power, the wealthy Jagan or the flattering cousin? Also, think about what that elevated wooden chair truly reveals about Jagan's view of his own social standing. And finally, based on Jagan's extreme self-righteousness and his rigid adherence to his own rules, what future conflicts do you predict will disrupt his life as the rest of the story unfolds? Keep these in mind because I promise you, Jagan's illusions are absolutely bound to be challenged.
Thanks for exploring this with me today. Keep questioning the story, and I'll catch you next time.